Imagine doing everything perfectly to prepare for a date. You know, you get dressed up, you manage the pre-date anxiety, you're sitting there in a nice restaurant feeling genuinely good about yourself.
Right, you're totally ready for it.
Exactly. The conversation starts. And then you realize the guy you're sitting across from excused himself to the bathroom 20 minutes ago.
Oh, man.
And he is not coming back. He has completely, unequivocally ghosted you right in the middle of a lunch date, leaving you sitting there totally alone, mortified, staring at a $60 bill.
It is the absolute nightmare scenario for anyone stepping into the dating world. But there is a massive seismic shift happening right now underneath that exact scenario.
Yeah.
What we are seeing out in the culture and what guys are telling us constantly is that women are becoming deeply, profoundly confused and frustrated right now.
Because the rules are changing.
Because men are fundamentally changing how they navigate dating. We are witnessing a widespread withdrawal of the traditional, blind approval-seeking behavior that used to completely define the dating marketplace.
The whole dancing monkey routine.
Exactly. Men are testing the waters, they are checking the vibe, and if it is not an absolute, undeniable match, they are simply walking away, literally in this case, with complete and utter indifference.
And that's exactly what we need to unpack in this deep dive. Because this dynamic isn't just an isolated incident at some random tapas restaurant. It is playing out everywhere.
Oh, for sure. It's systemic.
We see it in the subtle, kind of maddening games and text message threads. We see it in how first dates are structured, right up to long-term relationship expectations. So we're going to break down exactly how this behavioral shift is happening in the real world, the psychology driving it, and how you, as a man listening to this right now, can navigate this new landscape by just maintaining your own standards.
And we also need to recognize the intense psychological defense mechanisms that pop up when men simply stop chasing.
Yes, the ego defense is huge. Let's start by looking really closely at that restaurant walkout, because it perfectly encapsulates this shift. Picture the scene based on the situations we've been analyzing recently. You have a woman sitting there at a table. She's ordered a non-alcoholic strawberry lemonade.
A very specific order.
Right. And the guy she's on a date with has ordered 2 old fashions and a full plate of food. He politely excuses himself to the bathroom. 10 minutes go by, then 15, then 20.
At which point panic sets in.
She actually gets up and checks the stalls. Empty. He didn't even walk out the front door. He slipped out a side exit and completely bolted.
Which is wild.
She is sitting there, and the humiliation just has to be suffocating. She knows the waitress has been watching her sit alone for a third of an hour. The waitress knows exactly what happened.
Yeah, there's no hiding it.
The woman is out of pocket $60 for a guy who just vanished into thin air.
Uh-huh.
And here's where it gets even more complicated. She was so anxious and ready for this date, she actually mentioned taking what she called a spicy cube beforehand.
A spicy cube?
Yeah. For anyone who isn't familiar with that internet slang, she's talking about taking a THC gummy, an edible, just to manage her nerves and get into the right headspace because she found him so physically attractive. She prepped for this emotionally and chemically, and he just bailed.
It's crazy, and we need to analyze the psychology of why a man does that. Because according to the old traditional model of dating, this makes absolutely zero sense.
Well, not at all.
The old model says a man sits there, finishes his expensive drinks, eats the food he paid for, and tries his hardest to impress the attractive woman sitting across from him, regardless of whether they are actually clicking on a personality level.
Yeah, he just tussed it out.
Historically, the male biological imperative was to try and win her over, to close the deal. But men today are transitioning from a model of active persuasion to a model of passive observation. They are starting to operate in strict reality, not in the delusion of potential.
Okay, when you say delusion in this context, what are we actually talking about? Break that down for the guys listening.
Well, the delusion is the historical male trap of thinking, I can change her, or maybe she'll grow on me if I just invest more time, more money, and more effort.
The sunk cost fallacy, basically.
Exactly. The shift we are observing is that if a man realizes within the first 20 minutes of a date that this woman does not match the specific wavelength he is looking for, like if her energy is off, if she's acting entitled, or if the conversation is just a total dead end, he doesn't stick around hoping for a miracle.
He doesn't try to force it.
Right. He stops performing. He doesn't want to play the role of the dancing monkey anymore. He just leaves.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here, though, and push back on this a little. Because I hear what you're saying about not performing, but isn't walking out and leaving her with his $60 bill just unnecessarily cruel.
It's hard.
It feels cowardly. Shouldn't a grown man at least have the backbone to finish the date politely, pay for his own bourbon, and then just send a text later saying, "Hey, it was nice meeting you, but I didn't feel a spark"? Are we really calling this a shift in dating dynamics, or are we just making excuses for guys being massive jerks?
No, it's a completely fair challenge. Leaving the bill is certainly an extreme, unrefined manifestation of this behavior. You could absolutely argue it lacks class and basic etiquette.
Yeah, it's a bad boy.
But as observers of human behavior, we aren't here to judge the morality of the action, right? We need to pay attention to the underlying mechanism that allowed him to do it. It is the ultimate, absolute removal of the nice guy contract.
Interesting.
He's prioritizing his own time, his own peace, and his own standards over being perceived as polite.
So he just flat out doesn't care if she thinks he's a villain in her story.
Precisely. He is entirely detached from her opinion of him. And that is what is so deeply disruptive to the dating market right now. To use a metaphor, men are shifting from being salesmen trying to close a deal to being auditors checking the company ledgers.
Oh, I like that. An auditor doesn't care if you like him.
Right, he's just looking at the facts. This shatters a very long-held societal expectation that a woman's mere presence or physical attractiveness is enough of a reward to keep a man jumping through hoops for an hour and a half. He realized the vibe was off, and he made a cold calculation that his time was more valuable than her approval.
And her reaction to this sudden withdrawal of approval is incredibly revealing. She's sitting there, embarrassed, highly aware that the waitress pities her, and knowing that this spicy cue, this THC gummy she took, is really starting to kick in.
Yeah, the timing is terrible.
And instead of reflecting on the date, instead of taking a moment to ask herself, wow, what was the energy I was projecting that made this guy literally flee the building? Her immediate instinct is to soothe her bruised ego. She actually contemplates going over to the bar, getting drunk, and trying to find another hot guy just so she doesn't waste the high from the edible.
What we are looking at there is a textbook ego defense mechanism. The rejection she just experienced is so stark, so undeniable, and so public that her brain literally cannot process it as constructive feedback.
It would hurt too much.
Exactly. To protect her self-esteem, her psyche has to reframe it as a situational inconvenience. The internal monologue becomes, I have this chemical enhancement kicking in, I'm already dressed up at a restaurant, let me just replace the target.
Just swap out the guy.
Right. It is a complete and total refusal to sit with the uncomfortable sting of a man's indifference.
Which is wild because it shows how unprepared a lot of people are for this new reality. When a man refuses to play by the established script of chasing and pandering, the traditional system just shorts out. The cognitive dissonance is deafening.
It really is.
But this instinct to protect the ego when a guy pulls back isn't just happening when they're left holding a receipt at a restaurant. This dynamic starts way earlier. It starts before they even meet in person.
It absolutely does. It starts at the very genesis of the interaction. If we look at the modern texting dynamic, the asynchronous communication that defines early dating, we see the exact same friction.
Oh yeah, the texting games.
There is a scenario we see all the time that perfectly captures the current dating era. A woman matches with a guy on a dating app, let's say Hinge. He takes the initiative, which she loves. He gets her number, and he sets up a date for Friday. He does everything right on paper.
He's checking the boxes.
But there's a catch in his execution that drives her completely insane.
The dreaded slow text.
The 24-hour response cycle. Let's break down how agonizing this is for the modern brain. He gets her number, and then he waits a full day and a half to text her.
Which already has her on edge.
Right. When he finally does, she replies relatively quickly. Then he waits another full 24 hours to simply say, "How's your week been?" She replies again. Another entire day goes by. Finally, on Thursday night, the night before the date she has already cleared her schedule for, perhaps turned down other plans for, he hits her with what people are calling the soft launch cancel.
For the guys listening who might not know the terminology, a soft launch cancel is when you give a valid excuse to back out,
Right.
but you leave the ball somewhat in their court, right? It's not a hard rejection, but it's a polite exit strategy.
Exactly. He texts her and says, "Hey, my coworker got me sick today. I'm feeling awful. Do you mind if we reschedule for next week?"
And her reaction to this text is an absolute masterclass in contradiction. She goes on this rant where she is trying so hard to project apathy. She's saying things like, "You don't owe me anything, you could ghost me, and I literally don't care."
Oh, but she cares.
She actually says the words, "I'm too hot for him anyway." But if you watch her body language or listen to her tone, she is visibly furious. She She claims it's not a big deal. They've only exchanged 4 text messages total, but she is completely derailed by the fact that he made her feel rejected.
We have to unpack the staggering cognitive dissonance here. For years, the prevailing cultural narrative pushed heavily in the modern dating market has been one of extreme independence.
The boss babe era.
The phrase we hear constantly is, I don't owe you anything, I don't owe you a text back, I don't owe you a conversation, I don't owe you my time. Men have been conditioned to accept that silence is an answer and to just deal with it quietly without complaining.
Right. If a guy double texts because a girl hasn't replied in 2 days, or if he expresses frustration that she left him on read, he's immediately labeled as clingy or toxic or insecure, or he's accused of not respecting her peace. He's told to take the hint.
Precisely. That has been the established rule of engagement. Yet, the moment a man applies that exact same standard, when a guy takes 24 hours to reply because he's busy, or when he casually reschedules a date because he genuinely caught a cold, her ego is completely shattered.
It breaks the system.
She claims she doesn't care, but her intense psychological need to announce to the world, I'm too hot for him anyway, reveals exactly how deeply that indifference cuts.
It's pure projection. She's building a fortress around her ego to shield herself from the very real possibility that he just isn't prioritizing her the way she expects to be prioritized. But let's look at this from the man's side. Why is there such a massive emotional disconnect here? Why does a delayed text destroy her week while guys deal with this every single day?
Because facing blatant rejection, indifference, or getting flaked on is the baseline reality of being a man in the dating market. If we look at the behavioral economics of dating, men are the primary initiators.
They're the ones making the approach.
Therefore, they absorb the vast majority of the rejection. Men have to build character by walking up to a woman in a coffee shop or a bar, putting their ego completely on the line and getting ignored, or being told, I have a boyfriend, or getting a fake phone number.
Which happens constantly.
Men have to learn to synthesize that rejection, process the sting, and move on to the next day without throwing a tantrum.
It's reps.
Yeah.
You go to the emotional gym and you build calluses. You get rejected enough times and you realize it's not a fatal blow to your identity.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're inherently worthless. It just means it wasn't a match, or she was having a bad day, or the timing was off. You learn to detach your self-worth from her immediate reaction.
Exactly. Men develop an incredibly thick skin by sheer necessity. But when the roles are reversed, or even when the man simply withdraws his eager pursuit and slows down the cadence of his texts, women often lack those specific emotional calluses.
They've never had to build them.
They haven't, because the traditional dynamic always had men eagerly pursuing them, confirming plans, and double texting to keep their attention. So when they face a guy who texts every 24 hours, or who cancels without writing a 3-paragraph apology, it creates massive internal confusion.
The defense mechanisms flare up instantly.
They have to convince themselves the guy is inherently flawed, a bad communicator, or that they are simply too hot for him, rather than accepting the much simpler reality, he's just not seeking their approval.
And this is such a crucial takeaway if you're a guy listening to this conversation right now. When you don't chase, when you are entirely comfortable taking your time to reply, or setting a boundary, or prioritizing your own career and hobbies over rushing to text a girl back immediately, you become incredibly memorable.
Because you step completely outside the frantic, high-anxiety rules she is used to playing by. The men who are exhausting themselves trying to keep her attention, who are swiping and messaging constantly, they all blend into the background noise.
They're just another notification on her phone.
They become a commodity. The man who is comfortable with silence, who doesn't panic when a conversation pauses for a day, signals that he has an abundant mindset. He signals that he has options. More importantly, he signals that his self-worth is internally validated, not tied to the dopamine hit of her texting him back.
And it drives the market crazy, but paradoxically, it also creates intense attraction. Which brings us to a really fascinating side effect of this whole dynamic. Because the sting of this indifference is so sharp, and because so many women are terrified of facing the kind of raw rejection that men deal with every day, we are seeing a huge demographic simply refusing to put themselves out there at all.
They are completely avoiding any real effort.
This is where we see the rise of what observers are calling the soulmate delusion. We have an increasing number of women openly declaring that they simply do not want to participate in the dating process anymore.
It's a complete retreat.
There's one specific mindset we've encountered where a woman states, point blank, I don't want to date. I just want my person to walk right into my life, look at me, say, there you are, and tell me to pack my bags.
It's just pure magical thinking. The belief that the universe is going to Amazon Prime a perfect, emotionally intelligent, wealthy husband directly to her doorstep while she sits on her couch in sweatpants.
It is the ultimate avoidance of accountability. It's a refusal to engage with the messy, uncomfortable reality of human connection.
And the rationalizations they use to justify this withdrawal are fascinating. For example, one woman used a single, admittedly bad first date as her entire overarching rationale for giving up on men entirely.
Oh, the 10 kids guy.
Right. She went on a first date with a guy who apparently sat down and told her right off the bat that he wanted 10 kids, and it was completely non-negotiable.
Which, to be fair to her, is a pretty intense first date topic. If someone drops the, I need a basketball team of children line over appetizers, that's going to raise some eyebrows.
It is intensely forward. But realistically, it's just one guy with an extreme personal preference. A person with emotional resilience would recognize that, politely decline a second date, and move on to the next prospect.
You just laugh it off with your friends later.
But instead, she uses it as an impenetrable shield.
Ah.
Her narrative becomes, see, this is what's out there, men are crazy, I'm exhausted, I'm stepping back until my soulmate finds me. It is a highly convenient narrative to avoid the actual grueling work of vetting partners, communicating needs, and risking disappointment.
But then you have the other side of this avoidance strategy, which I find even more calculated and strategic. There's the case of the 30-year-old woman who completely and philosophically refuses to ever approach men.
Right.
She doesn't just avoid it, she has built an entire elaborate doctrine around why she shouldn't have to do it. She says she won't approach a man because, number one, if a guy isn't approaching her, he's obviously just not that into her.
Which is an assumption.
And number two, if he is into her but lacks the courage to walk across the room and approach, she doesn't want him anyway.
Right. Her stated logic is that she requires a man who can overcome discomfort. She literally equates a man being a little hesitant or shy at a crowded bar with him lacking the fundamental backbone to ask his boss for a raise, or negotiate a tough deal on a car, or stand up to his own mother if she tries to bust into their house unannounced.
It's a huge leap.
She connects a moment of social hesitation to a complete lack of masculine competence.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge this because doesn't she actually have a valid point here? If we look at evolutionary biology and sociology, don't women naturally want a guy who can take the lead? Don't they want a protector and a provider who shows confidence in the face of adversity? Isn't wanting a guy to approach just a biological baseline?
Yes, taking the lead is fundamentally a masculine trait, and cross-culturally, women are naturally attracted to confidence and assertiveness.
Right.
But we have to look deeper and expose the real motive operating beneath the surface here. This entire dramatic monologue about car negotiations and standing up to overbearing mothers, it is a highly intellectualized excuse to avoid the sting of rejection.
How so? Walk me through the psychology of that.
By establishing an impossible standard, demanding that the man must overcome all of his own social discomfort, must bridge the entire physical and emotional gap, and must risk total public rejection to prove his intrinsic worth to her, she ensures that she never has to be vulnerable.
Ah, I see.
She never has to hear the word no. She refuses to show even a subtle sign of initial interest, like a smile or lingering eye contact, because that would mean putting a fraction of her own ego on the line. It's not actually about wanting a strong leader. It's about hoarding all the social power and taking absolutely zero emotional risk.
Wow. It's like she wants to sit high up on a throne and judge the gladiators fighting in the pit without ever having to step foot in the arena herself. She wants the reward of a great relationship without paying the toll of vulnerability.
Exactly.
But that's the reality for guys, right? While women can concoct these complex theories and wait for a magical meet cute at a Blick store, men actually do have to take action. If a man just sits back on his couch and waits for his soulmate to knock on his front door, he is going to die alone. Men have to risk that discomfort. They have to initiate.
They do. The burden of performance, the burden of initiation is still overwhelmingly placed on men. Even in a modern, egalitarian society, the expectation is that the man makes the first move. And because that is a daunting reality, that's exactly why men are starting to change how they initiate. They're getting smarter about it.
You know, it makes total sense why so many guys look for a structured roadmap for this stuff. Because going in blind, relying entirely on trial and error, is absolutely brutal on your self-esteem.
It's exhausting.
If someone wants a more structured roadmap for learning how to actually take the lead and approach women without all the stressful guesswork, that's actually something Stealth Attraction by Richard LaRuina does really well.
I like that it gives guys a step-by-step framework instead of just leaving them to guess or wait for some magical soulmate to appear out of nowhere. Some men really prefer learning through a structured program, and Stealth Attraction is one example of how to bridge that gap between freezing up and taking confident action.
Exactly. Because when men do learn how to take the lead effectively, whether through experience, coaching, or structured frameworks, they stop doing it from a place of desperation and seeking approval. They start doing it on their own terms.
Which changes everything.
And that brings us to what I consider the most crucial evolution in modern dating behavior: the tests. When a highly confident man takes the lead today, he isn't just trying to impress the woman with his resume. He is actively testing her, the vibe checks. This completely flips the script on what women expect a date to be. The traditional expectation is that the man is the one auditioning for the role of boyfriend. But guys are turning the tables. Let's talk about the scenario of the guy who took a woman out, bought her drinks, was perfectly polite and respectful, but apparently spent the entire date talking about himself and his life experiences without asking her a single question about herself.
To a conventional observer, and certainly to the woman sitting on the date with him, this behavior looks like textbook narcissism.
Right.
She is complaining to her friends that he didn't try to get to know her at all. She feels like she was just a captive audience member to his monologue. But then it gets interesting. For the second date, he doesn't plan another lavish, expensive outing. He simply texts her on a Tuesday evening, "Hey, do you want to come over watch a movie tonight?"
And she is completely outraged by this. She takes to the internet to warn other women, making videos saying, "This is exactly why you don't give men second chances. He wants me to come to his house when he doesn't even know anything about me." But here's the thing. I have to push back a little on this guy's strategy. Come on. Talking about yourself the entire time on a first date, not asking her any questions, and then immediately inviting her straight to your house for date 2. Isn't that objectively just bad, low-effort dating behavior? I mean, shouldn't you actually want to get to know the person you're taking out?
It sounds bad on paper.
Furthermore, inviting a stranger to your house on date 2 is a major safety red flag for a lot of women. Are we sure these guys are playing 4D chess, or are they just being cheap and lazy?
That is the exact criticism you will hear from the mainstream dating advice columns. And yes, it might lack traditional finesse, it might even seem a bit callous, but you have to look past the surface and examine the hidden mechanics of what this man is actually doing.
Okay, what's he doing?
The commentary surrounding these behaviors suggests he is not necessarily a narcissist who loves the sound of his own voice. He is running a highly efficient, albeit blunt, compliance and vibe check.
A compliance check. Break that down. How does ignoring her on date 1 and inviting her over on date 2 equal a compliance check?
He is testing her genuine, baseline physical and energetic interest in him as a man, completely separate from the romantic dating experience he can provide. By inviting her straight to his house on date 2, he is deliberately bypassing all the societal rules.
The arbitrary dating rules.
Modern dating culture has these strict rules. I don't go to a guy's house until date 3, or he has to plan a real date with dinner and an activity. He is putting a situation in front of her to see if she will break her own rules for him.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Because it's a known phenomenon that if a woman is genuinely highly attracted to a guy, if she feels that raw chemistry, all those rigid, arbitrary rules often go right out the window.
Precisely. If she genuinely caught a vibe with him, if the physical and conversational energy was right, despite him doing most of the talking, she might just say yes and go over to watch the movie. And to be clear, we aren't even necessarily talking about an expectation of sleeping together.
It's just about the space.
It's about compliance to his frame. It's about saying, come into my space, let's chill out, and let's see if our energy matches in a low-pressure, real-world environment. If she doesn't want to do that, if she is rigidly attached to being courted, wined, dined, and entertained, she can simply say no and move along.
The brilliance of the strategy, even if it's blunt, is that he is entirely unconcerned with seeking her approval. He's not trying to convince her to like him.
Exactly. He is offering an experience, come chill at my place, and leaving the choice entirely up to her autonomy. He is not going to debate her. If she says no, or if she lectures him about how he should have planned a dinner, he simply doesn't reply.
He just moves on.
He rotates to another option who is more compliant and on his wavelength.
It's the ultimate filter for time wasters. He doesn't want to spend another $100 and 3 hours of his Tuesday night at a tapas restaurant just to find out she has a rigid checklist of boyfriend requirements that he has to fulfill before she'll hold his hand. He wants to know right now, do you actually mess with me? Do you enjoy my presence? Or are you just here for the free entertainment and the validation?
And this strategy completely short-circuits the modern woman's dating algorithm. It confuses them deeply because they are looking for the traditional signs of pursuit. You see this perfectly illustrated with the cultural conversation around guys starting strong.
Oh, this happens all the time.
There are countless videos of women complaining that guys get on the app, seem incredibly excited, talk about the future, plan a great first date, and then suddenly, without warning, pull back and say they aren't ready for a relationship. And the way women diagnose this behavior is fascinating. They always use therapy language.
Every single time.
They say things like, he clashed with my attachment style, or he's an avoidant.
I like how they always clinicalize it. Everything has to be a psychological diagnosis. It's my anxious avoidant attachment style triggering his trauma. No, he just lost interest. He just didn't want to see you again.
It is much easier to blame an abstract psychological concept than to accept a lack of interest. She is falling for surface-level words instead of observing his character and his actions over time.
Actions speak louder than the initial hype.
Men who are still stuck in the approval-seeking mindset will tell a woman exactly what they think she wants to hear. If her profile says, "looking for my husband," the approval-seeking man will mirror her desire for a relationship just to get his foot in the door and keep her happy.
Just playing the game.
But men who have options, or men who are actively and ruthlessly vetting their partners, don't play that mirroring game for long. They will run a vibe check, ask her over to see where her boundaries really lie, and look at how she reacts when she doesn't get her way. They look at her actions, not her self-diagnosed attachment style.
So when these guys run circles around her, acting interested to secure the first date, and then withdrawing the moment the vibe is off, she is exhausted. She's trying to read a script that the men have already thrown in the fire. They're just checking the vibe, and if it fails, they vanish. Which leads to the absolute superpower that men are discovering right now. And I think this is the core of the entire behavioral shift, the power of pure, unadulterated indifference.
Indifference is arguably the most potent tool in the modern dating landscape, primarily because women are completely and utterly unaccustomed to experiencing it from men. Society conditions women to expect male attention as a baseline reality.
Let's bring in the ultimate, perfect display of this indifference in action. The scenario of the woman with the flat tire. She is stranded on the side of the road, she's stressed, she needs help, so she pulls out her phone and texts a guy she's been casually involved with. She sends him a picture of the flat tire, and what does he reply?
A single solitary thumbs up emoji.
It's just absolutely brutal. A thumbs up. He doesn't ask where she is, he doesn't ask if she's safe, he doesn't offer to call AAA or a tow truck.
Not at all.
He doesn't drop everything or rush to her rescue like a knight in shining armor. He just taps the screen. Thumbs up, message received. Good luck with that.
And what makes this scenario so illuminating is what she does next. She admits in her video that she has, at bare minimum, 2 other guys in her phone right at that very moment who would gladly drop whatever they are doing, rush over in their trucks, and change her tire for her.
The orbiters.
Exactly. But instead of calling them, instead of solving her problem, using the resources available to her, she sits in her car, opens her camera, and makes a 10-minute video complaining about the indifference of this specific man who sent the emoji.
That is the million-dollar question. Why does she care so much about the one guy who won't help her when she has an army of orbiters waiting in the wings to do the manual labor?
Yeah.
And for the guys listening, an orbiter is a guy who hangs around in a woman's friend zone, constantly giving her free attention, validation, and favors, secretly hoping that one day she'll reward him with romance. She has these guys ready to go. So why is she crying over the thumbs up guy?
Because his indifference is profoundly maddening to her ego. From a historical and evolutionary perspective, she expects her distress, her vulnerability as a woman, to immediately command male labor, male attention, and male resources.
That's the old contract.
That is the traditional gender contract men provide and protect, women receive. The thumbs up emoji is a complete, unapologetic withdrawal of the approval-seeking behavior she subconsciously relies on for her self-esteem. It is a man saying, "Your distress does not obligate my labor."
It completely shatters her reality. Think about it. The orbiters who would rush to fix the tire, they are seeking her approval. They want the gold star. They want the pat on the head. Because they are predictable and easily controlled, they are essentially invisible to her romantically.
They're utilities.
Exactly. They're utilities, like a plunger or a wrench. The guy who sends the thumbs up, he is impenetrable. He doesn't need her gold star. He doesn't care if she thinks he's a bad guy.
Exactly. His refusal to comply with the distress signal demonstrates that he is not bound by her frame. And you see this exact same shock, this inability to process male boundaries, with the woman whose date confirmed with her by simply saying, "Yep, booked."
Oh, that's a classic example.
They make plans for a Thursday date. On Tuesday, he texts her, "Yep, booked the table," and then he never follows up. Wednesday goes by, Thursday morning goes by, Thursday afternoon goes by. She's completely panicking, asking the internet, "Do I assume the date is still on? Do men not realize you need to confirm the day of?"
She wants him to manage her anxiety.
She fully expects him to be anxiously managing her comfort level, texting her the morning of to make sure she hasn't changed her mind, seeking constant reassurance that she's still coming.
But his mindset is completely different. He said, "Yep, booked." The transaction was complete, the contract was signed. He expects her to act like a functional adult, honor the commitment she made, and show up at the restaurant at the agreed upon time.
Right.
He isn't going to hold her hand and constantly reaffirm his interest just to soothe her anxiety. He's busy living his life, doing his job, going to the gym.
And this brings us to the broader, inevitable reality that so many women are slamming into as the dating marketplace shifts over time. The one variable that no one can control, but that radically alters the balance of power aging.
This is where the delusion really hits a brick wall. We have to talk about the 40-year-old woman asking a genuine, almost heartbreaking question to the internet. She admits that in her 20s, she wasn't necessarily a supermodel, but she had youth. She had what she called a cute face.
Which counts for a lot.
It does. She had that youthful glow that naturally attracts male attention. And now, at 40 years old, she looks in the mirror and says the cute is gone. She's dealing with the realities of aging, deep lines around her eyes, gray hair coming in. And she's asking the void, asking anyone who will listen, are we doing this gracefully and letting the ugly take over? Or are we fighting it with hair dye and expensive makeup?
What she's experiencing is a profound realization of shifting market value. And this is a foundational concept in the behavioral economics of dating. When a woman is young, typically in her 20s, the sheer volume of men's approval-seeking behavior, the Aubrey's we talked about, the free drinks at the bar, the guys rushing across town to fix a flat tire, all of this shields her from the harsh reality of the world.
It creates a bubble.
It creates an artificial, highly insulated bubble of high perceived value.
She thinks it's going to last forever.
Yeah.
When you're 24 and every time you post a photo, you get 100 guys in your DMs telling you you're gorgeous, you start to think that level of attention is just the baseline of existence. You think you deserve it simply for breathing.
But as both men and women get older, a fundamental asymmetrical shift happens in the marketplace. Men in their 30s and 40s who have been putting in the work are finally building their futures.
They're hitting their stride.
They are securing their careers, amassing resources, and creating their own stable reality. As a result of this newfound stability and confidence, they stop chasing. They no longer have the excess time, the desperate energy, or the frantic biological drive to jump through hoops for a woman's validation.
They don't need it anymore.
They are looking for peace, they are looking for compliance, they are looking for a genuine cooperative partner. And if they can't find that, they are increasingly happy to just remain single, enjoy their money, and focus on their own purpose.
So while the men are grounding themselves in reality, building their resources, and raising their standards, these women who coasted on the approval-seeking behavior of their 20s are left completely unmoored. They are left clinging to absolute fantasy, hoping that the rules of the game haven't changed.
And the fantasies they cling to become almost comical in their detachment from reality. Look at the woman we analyzed who was literally putting out a market request, a public broadcast, for a guy to take her on a long weekend beach vacation.
Oh, this list is incredible. It's a perfect encapsulation of the delusion. She posts a video saying she wants a guy to pay for a luxury beach vacation where they can go on morning prayer walks, talk to Jesus, drink iced vanilla lattes, go sit on the beach, eat sandwiches, chips, guac, queso, drink margaritas, take naps, and read books.
It's very specific.
She just reads this list off like she's ordering from a room service menu.
What she is describing is a highly curated, all expenses paid Instagram aesthetic. She isn't looking for a man. She isn't looking for a human being with complex needs, his own ambitions, his own stress, or his own boundaries. She is looking for a two-dimensional extra to play the role of funder in the movie of her life.
She wants a walking wallet that also happens to hold her hand during morning prayer walks. She wants all the benefits of traditional male provisioning, but with a highly specific, modern aesthetic twist that centers entirely around her leisure and comfort.
And the tragic irony of her situation is that the men who actually have the financial resources and the freedom to provide that exact lifestyle are exactly the men who have entirely stopped seeking women's approval.
Exactly.
The man who has built his kingdom, who can afford to drop thousands of dollars on a beach weekend at the drop of a hat, is absolutely not going to tolerate a woman who brings nothing to the table but a list of demands for iced lattes and afternoon beach naps.
You'll see right through it.
He is going to test her vibe immediately. And if he finds that she operates entirely in delusion, if she brings no peace or value to his life, he is going to excuse himself to the bathroom and never come back.
Which brings us entirely full circle. For the listener out there right now, the guy who is navigating this complex, shifting landscape, this is the ultimate takeaway from everything we've discussed today. The more you focus on building your own reality, your purpose, your career, your physical health, your standards, and your internal peace, and the less you buy into these curated fantasies and rigid dating rules, the more genuinely magnetic you actually become.
Absolutely. When you remove your internal need for her approval, you completely remove her power over you. Modern dating is incredibly confusing for women right now, simply because men are transitioning out of that old model of blind pursuit. They are stepping back and observing.
By not obsessively confirming dates 3 times a day, by checking vibes and observing character instead of pandering to demands, and by being willing to walk out of a restaurant or send a simple thumbs up emoji instead of rushing to the rescue, men are taking their power back. They're establishing boundaries.
It is a massive recalibration of the dating market. And navigating it requires you to be entirely comfortable with their confusion, their anger, and their defense mechanisms. Let them call you names on the internet. Let them say you're a narcissist because you didn't ask enough questions. Let them say they are too hot for you.
Let them talk.
Let them protect their egos however they need to. Your reality, your peace, and your standards remain completely unchanged.
Exactly. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Something to seriously mull over before your next interaction, your next date, or even your next text message. Think about your own interactions this week. What would actually happen if you completely, 100% detached from the outcome of your next date? What if, instead of sitting there anxiously asking yourself, does she like me? Am I impressing her? You went into that interaction with the sole curious objective of discovering, does her reality actually align with mine? Does she bring peace to my life? Watch how quickly the entire dynamic flips, and watch how much more respect you command when you are no longer the one seeking permission to exist.